Alright, this video is a video on adding and subtracting integers, meant to be a helpful aid for my students as they prepare for their chapter test. Okay, so to get started, we just want to do a quick recap of what integers are. Okay, so integers basically are any whole number that is does not have a decimal at the end of it, and we specify it as being either positive or negative in value. So for example, we might have something like positive 12, okay, or alternatively maybe negative 11. Okay, what would not be an integer would be positive 3.74. Okay, we don't refer to that as an integer because of the decimals there. So it must be a whole number that is not a decimal, and it has a positive or negative value, which determines where it is on the number line. Okay, one way that we can represent integers is by using what we call integer chips. Okay, so integer chips, your textbook, and you might find them in other places as well, generally would use two different colors to represent values of integers. And so often you would find red, a red chip representing a positive 1. Okay, and then you would have perhaps a blue chip representing a negative 1. Okay, and very simply you would see examples of a set of chips. Okay, so maybe we've got 4 negative ones, and we've got 3 positive ones. And the question might ask, what is the answer, or how many chips do you have, or what do the chips represent in this case? So a way that we can use these is by pairing them up. Okay, so we would pair one positive with one negative, and each pair we would say represents a 0 pair. Okay, and that's because positive 1 and negative 1, they cancel each other out. So each of those are 0 pairs, and all that we would have left would be this one blue chip representing a negative 1. So the sum of adding all of those integer chips up would leave you with negative 1. So that's a tool that you can use as you start thinking about combining different integers. Okay. Another tool that I like to use, I'll start a new page. This tool is using the number line, and this I think is a very handy tool. We can use it even when we get into multiplying and dividing integers come grade 8, but it works very well for adding and subtracting as well. So very simply, we start with a number line, okay, and we put 0, and we know that the positive side is over to the right and the negative side is over to the left. Okay, so the way that you can use a number line in order to, we'll start by adding integers, okay, is by simply placing the two integers that you're adding up on the number line. So let's do an example here. Say we have an example of negative 2, and we're going to add a positive 3 to that. Okay, so some people might get a little confused. All the negative signs, positive signs, what do we do? Okay, the way I like to think of is putting it on a number line. So we're going to start at 0. Okay, and we're going to draw an arrow that represents the first integer that we have, the negative 2. So we are going to draw, going to the left, 2. Okay. So we are now at negative 2, okay, and then we're going to add to that another integer arrow that is going to represent positive 3. Okay, so what each integer represents is how many jumps you would have to do. So we're going to start at the end of, I'll just switch colors here to make it more clear. Now we're going to start at the end of where we were, okay, where the first integer ended, and we are going to draw an arrow that represents positive 3, and remember the positive is over to the right, so we're going to draw an arrow that jumps 3 times. Okay, so the arrow will go like that. Okay, and very simply we will see where we end up at the end of that, and if we draw a straight line down, oh look, we are at positive 1, and that must therefore be the answer to this addition question. Okay, not too bad. Let's do it. We'll see if you can do this one with me. Okay, so we've got an example here of -5, and we're going to add to that -3. Okay, and we want to know what that is. Okay, so we will start with the number line. Okay, and I'm going to draw it 0 over here because I'm anticipating which direction we're going to go. Okay, and we'll draw out our little ticks spacing it out. Maybe you'd want to use a ruler to do this nice and neatly, evenly spaced. Okay, and so we're going to start with the first one, represented -5. That means negative, remember, is over to the left, positive is to the right. So we are going to jump 2, 3, 4, 5 places to the left. Okay, so our first integer gets us to -5. Okay, and then we are going to add to that a -3 integer. And -3 again is to the left, and 3 jumps. 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's tricky to count the lines. That's why I always say to count the jumps. So even if you draw the little jump bubbles, that's an easy way to do it. So we'll draw that arrow out there. Okay, and now if we count it out, this one was -5, that's -6, -7. We are at -8 if we draw a line down. Okay, which means that this must equal -8. Sounds good? Alright. Let's move on and talk about subtracting integers. Okay. Now subtracting integers I think is maybe a little bit harder than adding integers, but it doesn't need to be much harder if you remember one simple trick. Okay, we did some worksheets in class that discovered this, but if we look at a few different examples, we're going to see something that a neat fact about subtracting integers. Okay? So we're going to just make a very brief column here that gives us shows us a little trick that we can use. So I'm just going to write out a couple examples here, and we're going to see if we notice the pattern. So we're going to start with going +2 minus +1. Okay? If we do that, +2 minus +1, well, that's 2 minus 1, that's easy, we know that as -1. Okay? Now I want to do a one beside it here, +2, and now we're going to add a -1. And you could whip out your number line again, and you would see when you did that the answer to that is +1. I'll just keep my positive signs in there. Yeah, that's kind of curious. They equal the same thing. Let's try another one here. Let's go +4, and we will subtract -2. Oh, that's tricky. Okay. When we do that, +4 minus a -2, and we could do that on a number line or with their integer chip pairs, or even punching it into the calculator, you will see that that equals +6. Okay, now I'm going to show you another one here, +4, and this time we're going to add a +2. And we know that 4 plus 2 is +6. Happened again. Okay, what's the similarities here? Hopefully you spotted it. In the first set, we are subtracting. The second set, we add. But we're not adding the same number, we are adding the opposite number. So in this one, we're subtracting a positive one, and we're adding a negative one. Okay, subtracting, adding. This is a negative 2. This was a positive 2. Okay, so we have essentially switched the two signs. The operation that we're doing, we're switching from subtracting to addition, and then we're switching the sign of what we are subtracting. So another way of saying this is subtracting integers, okay, equals adding the opposite. Okay, so this is a good rule of thumb that allows you to really only learn the one rule. If you know how to add, then that's all you need to do. Every time you see a subtracting one, you can just switch it over to adding. So let me show you an example. Let's go with positive 7 subtract negative 2. Okay, oh, maybe we think subtracting's a little complicated, so let's do what our trick said. We're going to add the opposite. So now, instead of reading this as positive 7 minus a negative 2, we're going to go positive 7 plus a positive 2. Positive 7 plus positive 2 is positive 9. Okay? That makes it a lot easier. Let's try one more. Okay, let's go negative 12 minus negative 6. Okay? Again, we are simply going to switch the signs. Negative 12 plus a positive 6. If you do that on the number line, we will see that that equals negative 6. Okay, maybe that's an easier way for you to do it. Good, that is adding and now to finish up, we are just going to do a couple that wrap it all up, that recognize that sometimes we have more complicated ones that maybe include both adding or subtracting, and also includes perhaps some word problems. Okay, so some of the word problems that you might see include things with temperature, things with maybe making a profit with a company, maybe elevation, so how high above the surface of the ocean something is. Okay, so best way to practice these is to do some examples, and we did some of those in class. You can look over some of those, and hopefully they make a little bit of sense to you. Okay, thank you. Hope that was helpful.
Made with Doodlecast Pro.